So, welcome everyone. The system broke down and said, we got to retry. And I've been chatting away and realized, oh, I've got to hit a button that says go live. So, again, I wrote hello from San Antonio. Hope you see that. If you'd type in where you're from, that'd be fun to know where uh, all we're touching or around the nation or the world. And what I want to do is start with a little story from uh, my experience being from Alabama. So we have the University of Alabama, and then we have Auburn, and so there's always conflict and discussions and jokes and all kinds of things. So one of the jokes I remember growing up was a guy that was an Auburn grad, and he had a firewood business, and so he would cut couple cords, 3 cords a day, sell them, whatever, and so that's an amount of wood for a fireplace. And in doing this, he decided he wanted to work faster, and he heard about these newfangled things called chainsaws. And so what he did is he went and purchased a chainsaw. After about a week, he comes back to the salesperson and says, "This thing doesn't work." And the salesperson looked at it, checked the switches, primed it, etc., and then cranked it. Run, 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 run. And suddenly, the Auburn grad looked at him and said, "What's that noise?" Well, that's kind of the picture, and what's going on is he didn't know, he's stupid, whatever the game is. But the truth is that he didn't have the ability to imagine what in the world the chainsaw was supposed to do. He didn't know how it worked. And in my experience, a lot of life is that way. That can happen. I've seen people with electric knives cut with them and not actually use the power of the electric knife. And it gets down to this. In homeschooling, there's a tool that we have available that we don't use. And I'd like to walk through it. My name is Dr. Fred Ray Libran, and my wife Jody and I educated our 5 kids from birth to college. They're out into life now, doing well, really well. And we have 13 courses online. I've done a lot in education. I've taught at university level, high school level, obviously homeschool, other levels. And we're just trying to share what we've learned so you can kind of skip some of the problems and advance the ball, because we're convinced this information will change lives. So what I'm going to hope to do today is share with you something that's going to change your life. So there's a tool that you have that, if you'll make use of it, could dramatically change everything. And the tool is your imagination. Your imagination. This will relate to your kids' imagination too. But imagination is one of those things, like when I bring it up, everybody knows, oh yeah, what it is. Oh yeah, that's important. But this is the problem. When things become a cliche, especially true things that become like cliched in the world, a cliche tends to diminish it. It makes us kind of ignore it. We all know that. Oh yeah, think outside the box. Something like that. Oh yeah, first, hey, yay from Phoenix. Hey, first, understand and be understood. It kind of gets into cliche world, and suddenly we're not really using the principle in communication. Carpenters, measure twice, cut once. Well, that's there for them to remind it, but not to become a cliche to just forget it, because that's how you waste wood. So this thing about the imagination, I think we can ignore it, and it can then turn into just a commodity, not something special, something common everywhere. Common, commodity, it's plenty of it, and it's out there, and it's not anything special. In the business world, they do that too. They try to turn you into a commodity, that what you offer is not unique and special. So you got to keep defining why you're unique, why you're special. Well, this is going to be about your homeschool, and I'm going to tell you that you don't want your homeschool just to be a generic commodity cliched thing. You want it to be special, and the way you're going to make it unique and special to you is largely going to be to engage the imagination. So I woke up this morning at a little after 5, like I do, and I spent a little time. I always do this on something. I don't always know what it is, honestly. It's just whatever interests me. And today, the imagination interests me, so that's why you're enjoying some of this. But what the end result of this conversation is going to be is to show you how and invite you to start using your imagination with how you want homeschool to go, with how you want your kids to turn out, with how you want any subject to go, math or whatever. It might be even things like extracurricular activities or cleaning, or maybe your spouse's involvement. We'll talk about all those things. But what I want to do is kind of briefly read to you just a few of my notes, if you'll indulge it. So as I was thinking out loud and working on this, and by the way, I put everything into notebooks. I have zillions of them for decades that I just want to think it through. I don't really do anything with it. I just sit there and write up stuff, you know. So here's what I got: imagination. And we're going to apply it to homeschool, so follow along with me. What if imagination is the absolute leverage tool in all achievement? So I'm sitting here pondering, what if imagination too is something that is really key? What if you couldn't achieve without using the imagination, is what I'm kind of saying. And when you use it, it not guarantees, but semi-guarantees success. I think that's quite probable. And I think we've heard the cliche so much and people talk about it so much that we've forgotten how important this tool is. And so my next thought: a cliche can harden an idea within a culture, but it can also turn an idea into a commodity. I mentioned that. Of course, imagination is everything, but then it's forgotten or underemployed. So I wrote, kind of thinking about that. Think of the advantage of being able to imagine a specific result, the responses of others, and all the completed steps necessary for its completion, its arrival into existence. So I'm sitting here saying, imagine the advantage when you sit there and in anything, if it's a tennis game or a golf game, or how you're going to put an Afghan together or sew something. It doesn't matter what the topic is. When you can think it through with your imagination, if you're giving a talk or speech and think about how they'll respond and what they'll say and what they'll do, all of that in your head allows you to put together a better probability of things going well. So as I thought about this, it jumped in my head some stuff I'd read about Tesla. And so I thought I would try to share that with you. If I can pull this off. Let's see if this works. Whoops. I'm sorry, just bear with my confidence issue. Okay. So some quotes I found I've had before, but I found a few others just to think with me for a second. Now, Tesla didn't invent a car company. That'd be Musk who did that, but named for this guy who is like one of our three geniuses around electricity and innovation. So there's Edison, there's Tesla, and there's a guy named Steinmetz. And so these three, and Westinghouse is kind of in there too, but these three really put together what we have in power grids and all kinds of stuff. Edison wanted DC current like batteries. Tesla said, no, it's got to be alternating current, and Tesla won out in the course of time. That's what we have. So he said this: imagination is the life force of the genius code. Facts and ideas are dead in themselves, and it is imagination that gives life to them. Opportunities are whispers, not foghorns. That's a book by Sean Patrick quoting him. The next two quotes are similar, so I want to discuss them both, and let me just read them. I do not rush into actual work. This is Tesla. What he would do is work out a machine, a turbine, he'll say here, in his head, and he'd calibrate it, and he'd fix it. He'd do everything in his imagination. When I get a new idea, I start at once building it up in my imagination and make improvements and operate the device in my mind. When I've gone so far as to embody everything in my invention, every possible improvement I can think of, and when I see no fault anywhere, I put it into concrete form, the final product of my brain. Like then he builds it. When I get an idea, I start once building it up in my imagination. I change the construction, make improvements, and operate the device in my mind. I guess I could pull this up. It is absolutely immaterial to me whether I run my turbine in my thought or test it in my shop. I even note if it is out of balance in his imagination. And then he says something kind of really cool, which is let the future tell the truth. And I would say for homeschoolers, that's where a lot of us live. Let the future tell the truth. Did this work? I'll say, we were at a time insecure, but we imagined what it might be like and imagined a plan and started implementing the plan and adjusting the plan. And the future has told that it worked. There. So this does work. I appreciate the thought. Sounding good. Hello from Phoenix. So that's fun. Someone just threw in, that reminds me of Temple Grandin. Yeah. Who was confident in her systems because she ran it through her mind 1,000 times. And I'm going to get to confidence. That's a really nice point. Absolutely. So as we keep going and you think about Tesla and what he did in his imagination, he would imagine it and calculate it and calibrate it, and then he would build it. So a few more notes that I had as I just pondered this. Underneath Tesla, I wrote, imagination was a want, desire, definite purpose. It wasn't random imagining, it was focused. He wanted a result. He was trying to figure out something with electricity, usually. And so in his invention or his machine or his calibration or whatever, he had something in his mind, a definite purpose. And this is kind of a big deal. Sometimes we have vague notions of what we want our kids to turn out to be. Not dumber than other people, at least okay, a good person. Well, that's all fine, but you might want to be a little more specific than that. What do you want them to have in terms of skills or character? What do they need to know socially? Having a clear idea of helping your children learn to make and keep friends is very different than vaguely hoping they're happy. Get the idea? I'm going to come back to this one. The only thing else I want to read is a definition here. So imagination. So this definition is probably from dictionary.com. I got it from Alexa. So imagination, the faculty of or for forming images and concepts that are not actually present to the senses. So think about this with me. So it's a faculty, an ability we have, some capacity. That doesn't mean we're skilled at it, but we have a faculty for it. For forming, or I said generating images and concepts. Now, you'll notice there are two things there. Images are pictures, right? So you can imagine pictures, like imagine a pink elephant on a wire crossing Niagara Falls with an umbrella, right? So you can imagine pictures, but also concepts, and that's more the word side. In our brains, people say we think in pictures, not untrue, but not completely true. We also use words. And so the abstraction of words is another whole system. So images and concepts that are not actually present to the senses. That means not in the present and not the senses, what see, taste, smell, touch, whatever. We're actually generating a concept or a picture that is not currently present. And in a way, you might want to just call that, I don't know, hallucination. Someone just asked, hey, where are you streaming to? Where else? So we stream on right now Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube Live. I think those are the main ones. A couple of spots in Facebook. Glad for that question. So in using the imagination, we start understanding this. That's what we're up to. We're using our minds to do concepts and pictures. And the way I like to describe it, at least on the vision level, vision to me is remembering a future you want to see. So think about that. Visioning is remembering a future you want to see. So as you use your imagination with your homeschool, you're going to actually start remembering something you pictured before and get the picture clearer, or the concepts, the words. You're actually, with your vision for your homeschool or for your kids, is going to be about remembering a future you want to see. So it's about the future, of course, but it's actually a function of remembering by that stage in your imagination. And memory is an imagination thing too. So I described it, I'm kind of getting a glimmering appreciation for it. And I also added this, and I'll stop here. Imagination, if so powerful, can only be thought of as absolutely necessary, but still dangerous. Like electricity, it's dangerous, but I respect it, and it's useful. And imagination is the same way too. And kind of the rest of my notes, I essentially describe how in our imagination, this whole game is, oh, how do I describe this to you that makes it so valuable? It's like this. Everything you do, everything you see, look around, these bookshelves behind me, these books, right? These glasses, this ring, all these things were imagined before they were created. The whole world's that way. Your world's full of those things. Everything you can look around and see is imagined. And what's going to go on in your life is you're either going to imagine the future you want and work on it, or you're just going to adopt somebody else's imagination. That's what we do with curriculum and what we do with ideas. And that's not a bad thing. What you're doing now, I'm hopefully engaging your imagination, right? And if your imagination is getting engaged, we're going to get you to have a new picture of what your homeschool could be, a new, better picture. Maybe not a lot different, but a little bit. And that's going to set in motion the possibility of that becoming true in the real world. That is the power of this imagination thing. So when I was thinking through what I wanted to share with you briefly is to understand that imagination is both a positive and negative force. I'm arguing for it being a positive force to help you shape your homeschool and your family and your relationships, marriage, all these things. It can be a negative thing too, in a couple of obvious ways. Osama bin Laden negatively used his imagination to come up with the idea and the plan to train and fly planes into World Trade Center, that kind of thing, Pentagon, right? So there's imagination being used for something negative. Also, our imagination is how we can get ourselves really anxious and upset. So we imagine what's going to happen with the pandemic. We imagine what's going to happen with illness. We're going to imagine what's going to happen in a job or relationship or whatever. And as a result, that negative imagination can generate a lot of anxiety within us. It is that powerful. So when you understand that, you can appreciate you're playing with something very, very serious. And, theologically, if you want to figure this out, you can go back to Genesis and find out that, according to the Bible, God created us in his image, and his image was to be a creator, so he must have made us to kind of be sub-creators, and we use it for good and evil. Well, how do you use this? That would be the real question. Practically speaking, what do we do here to really make our imagination maybe get into shape and apply it directly to our homeschool? And I would say it comes down to a couple of key things. One is play, and the other is creative tension. So let me explain these to you. So play. So your imagination, when you're using it, you're playing with it. It's not reality. You're just out there imagining. Imagine your kids graduating from high school, however you do that, and they've been educated. Imagine them going to college or being in another context, and they can, like our kids, they suddenly got into college and they realized they had a superpower. They could read and comprehend, and most of their friends couldn't, even in really good colleges. They had another superpower. They could do their work every day, and by the time exams rolled around, they were roughly ready. And their friends didn't know how to do that. They were just in a constant panic at the end, trying to learn the whole thing. Well, when you play, you want to play with both, in your mind, your imagination, both the result and the process. So I was giving examples of results there. But the process might be you imagining what a good day would be like in your homeschool. What time do we get up? I mean, right now, your current homeschool is a result of what you've been imagining. If you don't like the results, you're going to have to think a new thought. But, we imagined the kids getting up together on time and getting to work without us forcing the issue. And we imagine them doing their work peacefully and quietly and working hard and getting through around lunchtime, and then being able to play and be happy and do other things, music, art, different things we had for them in the afternoon and towards the evening, us hanging out and enjoying the time and not having the kids run off to have to do homework. That was our kind of imagined process, especially around things like reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, as you go through this, you can just imagine a question like, what's the harm of doing this? What is the harm with you taking a moment daily to think about your homeschool and imagine how it might be different? Imagine a child saying, "Yes, mother," instead of whatever they say. What's the harm in just playing out that game in the nature of pictures and concepts, principles, and how you might see it go? I wrote down here: homeschool, graduation, math, reading, behavior, spouse, all of it. I mean, even a spouse. I commonly see people saying their husbands usually are not on board exactly with homeschooling. Well, what if you started imagining that he was? That doesn't make him do it, but it sets in motion a way to think, how could we get there? And then what would be the process? It might be you imagine him going, okay, I get it. It's really working well. Well, how did he get there? Well, he saw proof. Good. What would prove it to him? I don't know. Yeah, so you get to ask him. Say, I realize I've been arguing with you about homeschool without ever finding out what would prove it to you. What would convince you? Is it our kids? Is if I could research and show some data? Because that imaginary process allows you to get information about your actions. And your actions are what bring it into reality, into the game. So that's play. And play is just you play around with it. That's all there is to it. It's just a simple process of trying that on, adjusting the picture, putting something else in there, put a hat on, take a hat off. It doesn't matter. It's just play. But that's what it's formed out of. That's how you get good at it. The other thing is something called creative tension. Okay, so one of my mentors, Robert Fritz, talks about this. And his whole point is if you'll set this up, your brain will start working on how to solve it. And here's how you set it up. Get a picture up here of what you want, the result, the thing you want to create, and then spend some time thinking about where you are. So if you want a child that is good at math, and right now they're poor at math, let's just picture that. And you spend some time imagining that your child is really going to be good at math. They get to where, oh, I get this now. Oh, I get this. I'm understanding this. And their grades go up and they start doing more lessons and their confidence builds, etc. That vision then needs to be compared where they are. They hate it. They throw their pencils. They don't try. They only do a few problems a day. That tension right there is what you want to hold on to, because that tension will set in motion in your mind some way to resolve it. And what will start happening is, maybe this is a confidence thing. If we could get him confident at 2 problems or one kind of problem, maybe he needs to do the same lesson over and over again until he can knock it out. And then do the next lesson over and over until he can just do it. And maybe it's a half a lesson. And then he starts building on that confidence. Your brain will start looking for ways to do that. You might even ask him, what's his frustration? How can we make it better? It may comes up, you figure out about an online tutoring thing. Maybe you switch a curriculum thing. Maybe you realize it needs to be done a little bit every day, not a lot once a week. And I'm just making all those up. But that's what you do with that kind of creative tension. I want to mention one last thing. By the way, I'd love your questions about any of this. Imagination, I think, is connected to confidence too. So the more we can imagine, it did with Tesla, and we alluded to that. If we can imagine something clearer and clearer, both the process and the result, how it might work, you could absolutely see your confidence grow, because it just makes so much sense. this is what's going to happen. You can look at the future. This is part of what we do with imagination. We do imagination work, then we do reality work. Imagination work, we're making sense of it, and we suddenly start going, this could happen. This could really work. I mean, the word confidence is con and fide, with faith, right? So the whole nature of using your imagination, I think, finishes with faith. Final thing I'm going to say is, as I said before, you're going to follow what you imagine. And it's either your own or someone else's. Might be me, might be someone else. And your current circumstance is generated from your imagination, maybe your lack of imagination, if things aren't going the way you want. You just haven't imagined them to be different. I remember a couple we were working with one time. We used to have banana pudding on a Friday night and have like 6 couples in to talk about parenting their kids. This is when I was in the pastorate. And one night we worked on one family, and they had a problem with their son not liking anything mom makes. And I said, well, we need to imagine something else. And so as we worked with it, we finally got her to just imagine her son saying, wow, Mom, one of my favorites, right? And literally, we set up a plan, and within 24 hours, or maybe 48, but a day or two, the boy said, wow, Mom, one of my favorites. And she was so shocked, she was trying to figure out what the thing was that she had fed them. And it wasn't the thing. She'd fed them before, or whatever it was. She had a new game in play about how to get her son to be polite and excited and eat his food. And I don't think he had much problem since then, because she figured out something starting with her imagination. This is honestly why the writing course is so great. If you if you own it, you probably ought to go through it yourself. Or you ought to start getting your kids to take some of their time. In writing, we like imagination. We like them to write fiction, stories, mostly. We'll get to essays and all the rest, but we want them to master words. And making up things is easier than thinking up things, thinking, clearly on a subject. They could write about the homeschool. They could write something like, our perfect homeschool day, our best homeschool day, and let them write what it's about. Maybe it's all about eating junk food and not doing homeschool, but that'd be a great discussion starter. But you could engage their imagination, or you could start writing. That'd be pretty cool too. To write down a future, write down a process, just with your imagination, no commitment to it. You haven't done anything. But to generate this play game of your mind starting to imagine a little better future than you've got right now. So I think that'll change your life. Question. Look at this technology. Would you say this imagination is the same as manifestation, affirmations, popular vision boards? I would not. Okay, so maybe. I mean, this stuff about, The Secret and the manifestation and vision boards, affirmations are their own category. But what they basically say, this concept from New Thought or New Age thinking, is there's stuff the universe is made out of, and when you imagine it positively and get a clear picture in your mind, the universe comes to your aid and creates it. So if you imagine something, you can get it. I have a far more mechanical and scientific reason this stuff works, and that would be it's actually organizing your mind in a way to take some actions that would get you there. And so it's in the actions and the doing. It's much more about, look, if you imagine a flower arrangement for a dinner, and you've got some, I don't know what you have. You have some baby's breath, and you have some goldenrods, and you have a lily or two, and you think about how to put them in there, and then you put some little palm fronds in there, and the green in the background, and some baby's breath, and the lilies up to the left, and you imagine it. You just kind of put it together, and you adjust and work. This is about more of the Renaissance, the creative process, how painters work. Painters don't imagine a painting and the painting shows up, but they imagine a painting. And then they take a stroke and they look at how it went. And then they take another stroke and look at how it went. Take another stroke, and they keep doing it until they painted something that matches what they were envisioning, whether it was a picture out there or something in their head, or some adjustment between the two? Really great question. What else? Any other questions you have about starting to play and use your imagination to imagine what kind of homeschool, what kind of relationships, what kind of children's skills could you imagine? It'll change your life. And if you can't imagine, then great. Find somebody that can imagine and adopt their, just model it. That's better than, as we say in Alabama, poking in the eye with a stick, right? That's a decent way, absolutely, to go. All right. I hope this helped. Get out there, start imagining a little bit better future and a process, and see what happens. I'd love to hear from you. Bless you.